In this video, I'm going to talk about how to cultivate compassion in these difficult times. First, we'll talk about what compassion is, why is compassion important, and share with you 4 things that you can do to help cultivate compassion in your own life. Whew! How are you all doing? Some of you who follow me in my Patreon community know that I was sick. In fact, I came down with COVID. And I'm just coming out of it. I feel probably 95% recovered now. Feeling pretty good. Energy levels increasing a little bit. But man, I was 10 days in isolation and just feeling terrible. You know, last time I had this, which was a few years ago, can't remember now. I just remember, it was the same kind of experience where when my body is sick, my mind is sick. Meaning that everything is dark. This whole world is terrible. Life is not good. And it started making me think about a lot of what I'm hearing lately from students and comments on my YouTube channel. And that is people are going through very difficult times right now. There's a lot of anger and frustration all over the world. You know, I'm only seeing sometimes what's happening in the United States, but as I'm looking around the world, hearing from students around the world, it's very difficult times. And a lot of people ask me about compassion and how to develop compassion in these difficult times. So that's something I want to talk about today. First of all, what is compassion? There's a lot of ideas about it. Why is it important? And how do we, I don't even want to say develop it, because essentially we all are born with this original compassion. You know, I'm going to get into this a little bit later. Right now, I have to go get gas in the car. But when I get back, let's talk about all of this. Chicky. I've been meaning to make this video for quite some time, but I've been a little hesitant to do so. And the main reason for that is there's a lot of ideas about compassion. There's a lot of misconceptions about compassion. So I'm going to talk about compassion from my own experience, after practicing Zen meditation for over 27 years, and really how it's manifested in my own life. So first is, what is compassion? If you run into Buddhism, you might see compassion defined as the wish for others to be free from suffering. I really don't think that is enough. So I went on the internet to find a definition of compassion, and this is what I found. Compassion literally means to suffer together. It is defined as the feeling that arises when you are confronted with another's suffering and feel motivated to relieve that suffering. I resonate with this definition a little bit more, especially compassion meaning to suffer together, because it's not my idea about compassion. It's not even my own personal feeling. It's this connection with others, where we feel the raw sensations of what they're going through, because we have no idea about what people are going through. But we all have the raw sensations of anger, sadness, and fear. So when I experience this with other people, it motivates me to actually do something. So I really think that this is the most clear way to define compassion. So why is compassion important anyway? And again, I can only talk about my own experience of it. And something I've noticed by cultivating compassion, or I'm not even sure if that's a good way of saying it, maybe getting back in touch with this compassion. So something I've noticed by doing that is my connections with others are more meaningful. I've definitely noticed more of a positive mental and physical state. I know my relationships with others have become more clear. And also I have more of a positive attitude of actually wanting to help this world, actually trying to do something helpful. I know this video is how to cultivate compassion, but compassion is something that all of us already have. We're born with it. I think what happens is we get disconnected from this compassion because we're all holding something. It's anger, a sadness, or fear, or we're holding our likes and dislikes about other people. When my children were born, I noticed that they didn't have any racist kind of thinking. They didn't have the strong like and dislike or hate for others. And I remember too, even when they got older, if somebody got hurt, they would be really concerned. Like, Daddy, that person needs help. And I realized, that's something we already have, but it gets lost. In Buddhism, they talk about the 8 consciousnesses. And the first 6 are eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, mind. And the 7th consciousness is this ego, this creation of self. And this what really divides us in this world. We create this strong sense of self, so there's other, I, you. Now this whole world is divided into opposites. Good, bad, right, wrong, like, dislike. You notice how I'm doing that there? So this delusion of self really gets us disconnected from this compassion. I made a video recently called The 3 Poisons, and I gave some, remedies to overcome these 3 poisons. I'll put a link down below so you can check out that video. Compassion has 2 very important aspects, and that is intention and action. So I'm going to share 4 things that I have done and still do to help connect with this compassion that's already here and how to manifest it. And I think the first one is intention. Because if we're holding our anger, holding our likes and dislikes, our confusion, our fear, our sadness, if we're holding those things, then we don't have access to this compassion. We're disconnected from it. So we have to make a very strong intention to let go. That means open our hearts and open our mind. It has to start with an intention. Otherwise, realizing this compassion is not possible. The second thing we can do is to have compassion for ourselves. I notice many people who are critical of others are very critical of themselves. We call it checking in Zen. We check ourselves. We're judging ourselves. We're so hard on ourselves. If we're hard on ourselves, it's not even possible to have compassion for others. So it begins by this strong intention, and then really investigating our own suffering. And again, I made a video about this, about the 3 poisons. Again, there's a link down below. But I really recommend that we look into this very closely. Now, I happen to practice meditation to really look at these things closely, see the things that I'm holding, and practice not touching them. Because it doesn't mean we're not going to have anger, fear, or sadness. But if we're holding these things, it's really not possible to have any clarity in our own life. So having some kind of practice to really investigate closely these things that are causing a hindrance in our lives is very important. The third thing might seem very simple and basic, but earlier I mentioned how I was sick with COVID, and that whole week I was depressed and this whole world was very dark. And I noticed that if I'm not getting enough sleep, or if I'm not eating right or taking care of myself, it really affects our mind. Many of us don't realize that our mind and bodies are not separate. If we just try to take care of our mind, we may neglect taking care of our body, so we will suffer. If we don't take care of our physical health, then that affects our mind. And again, we will suffer. So just getting enough sleep, eating right, maybe exercising, really can create a different attitude or different outlook, not only in our own life, but just in the world in general. So this is really recommended. It's something I have to do constantly on a daily basis. So the fourth thing I recommend, and it's probably the most important, because earlier I mentioned the 2 most important aspects of compassion is intention and action. We have to do it because, again, it's not a belief or an idea. It's not just a feeling that we have about others. It's this connection, this true connection that we experience with others. In Zen, sometimes we call it this transmission, where our mind and the person in front of us become one. It's not separate. From this place, we can actually start practicing compassion. So first I said, practicing compassion with yourself. Then try practicing compassion with those you live with. Maybe you live with your partner or your children, roommates. It's really a good place to start because even for many people, that's difficult. But if we can have compassion for ourselves and then practice compassion with those we live with, then it's easier to have compassion when we go to work. Go to work and practice this compassion. Look at your neighborhood. I know in the neighborhood I live in, it's very diverse and there's many different ideas and beliefs out there. And it's really important to practice that compassion with those people. Because if we can do that, then wherever we go, we can practice this. And I think last I would suggest practicing compassion with those you don't like. Those who have different ideas than yours. This is very difficult. Because one thing I notice, if we're holding our own ideas or anger or emotions or opinions, and someone else are holding theirs, the only result is suffering. Somebody's got to give, somebody's got to let go. And it can start with us. If we want to see compassion in this world, if we want to see peace in this world, it has to start within us. One thing I want to make clear is compassion doesn't mean being compliant. This whole world is suffering and that is the truth. And I feel bad for those people who are suffering. This really is getting into this kind of, I call spiritual bypassing. I also made a video about that. I also will put a link down below so you can check it out. So it doesn't mean that we're always going to feel good and everything's peaceful. It just means that we're more clear. If we perceive the truth of suffering, we want to do something. If we have true compassion for this world, maybe that means we take action to fight for peace or fight for what's correct. Now, I can make a whole video about that because there's an idea of what's correct and what's not correct, but I'm not talking about that. Again, I'm going back to this compassion we already have, this clarity we already have, and this wisdom that we already have. So it doesn't mean we just let things happen and, wish for others to be free from suffering. Yeah, that's important. But it's responding to the truth of suffering. And if we're not holding our own suffering, then we can approach situations with more clarity. There's a lot more opportunities to do something helpful. So I think that's really important. Don't fall into this idea of love and compassion. Take away that idea. Take away all of your ideas, your experience and your condition at that moment. Make a true connection in the moment. Let the compassion manifest by itself and then respond. And this truly will make a difference in your own life, but also this whole world. So those are my thoughts about compassion and how to cultivate it in our lives. I hope this video was helpful. You can let me know by liking this video, share this video with someone, or put a comment down below. Also, I'd be interested in hearing from you. What does compassion mean to you? And how do you express it in your own life? Put it down in the comments. Okay, everyone, I hope you're all doing well, and I will see you very soon.